Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. And joining me in the studio this evening, I have Sam Payton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign. Good evening, Sam. Welcome back.
Hi, Gordon.
And also with us tonight for the first time is Josh Menny from Aberdeen Independence Movement. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Hopefully we'll hear from you a little bit later on in the broadcast. But first of all, the coronavirus update. And as of 2 p.m. today in Scotland, there has been a total of 103,508 coronavirus tests concluded. And of these, 88,352 tests were confirmed negative. 15,156 tests were positive. 849 people were in hospital last night, 29 of whom were in intensive care, with another 11 suspected COVID-19 in intensive care. This marks an increase of 55 confirmed new cases since yesterday. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection has sadly risen to 2,273. This number only includes those who died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 36,914 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 121. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And now to our first story of the evening. Dominic Cummings, and at a press conference in the garden at number 10 Downing Street this afternoon, Boris Johnson's chief advisor attempted to explain his actions in driving from London to Durham when he and his wife suspected that they were suffering from COVID-19 symptoms. He claimed that he was allowed to bend the rules on self-isolating because of his family's special circumstances, specifically that he was worried that neither he nor his wife would be well enough to look after their 4-year-old son in London. But by moving to Durham, one of his nieces would be able to help with childcare if necessary. He then claimed that his day out to Castle Barnard was done to check if he was fit to drive before setting out on the journey to return to London. This test drive involved him taking his wife and son with him, stopping for 15 minutes to sit on the banks of the river, and then stopping to let his son do the toilet and play in the woods. The reason for the test drive was that he was worried about his eyesight. Journalists questioning him seemed unconvinced by his special pleading, and it remains to be seen if he has satisfied his critics. Now, if I could come to you just first of all, Sam, just for this one, what was your first reaction to hearing these various, shall we say, explanations from Mr. Cummings about why he drove 260 miles when he was apparently suffering from COVID-19?
Basically, it was disbelief, totally and utter disbelief that somebody has went on air live and came away with these excuses. I mean, we were all told very clearly what the lockdown procedures were going to be, and there was exceptions, but the exceptions were put in place for other reasons. And for given somebody in a privileged position like Cummings and his wife, to turn around and say they feared for their son and childcare is a load of absolute bollocks. As a single parent myself, we have to deal with very young children when you are ill, and and sometimes you are pretty much on your own, because not everybody has the advantage of having family, neighbours, or that kind of community support. So at the end of the day, I just found I was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm hearing this. And then for us I think he was trying to go for the sympathy, and it wasn't quite, well, it never worked with me anyway. I mean, I was just very much just sitting there watching it going, really? This is what I'm listening to? This is this man's excuses. Because basically, they've called journalists liars. They've made all these allegations towards, and then they've come back and then basically said, this happened.
Sam, I believe they're even trying to lay some of the blame on the local police force.
Yeah, they are. They're trying to turn around and say, the media and the journalists, misrepresented the facts. But the thing is, his own wife misrepresented the facts in her article about, their time in lockdown. So, you can't turn around one hand and say, aye, well, this one never done this, but however, it's all right for my wife to do it. You just can't. It's honestly, the man should be sacked. End of story. He's broke the lockdown rules, regulations, guidance, whatever way you want to word it. He's basically admitted, breaking these things live on camera in front of the UK and the world. And he's also admitted to driving when being unfit to do so.
Yeah.
Now, the last time I checked, Gordon, you'll be in the best person to answer this.
So
that is a possible criminal offence. And he had a child in the car.
Well, he claims, Sam, that the COVID-19 infection actually was playing havoc with his eyesight. Now, if you've got bad eyesight and you think you're not fit to drive, you don't get in a car, surely, and drive 30 miles just to see how dangerous you are.
Especially, and we're meant to believe that he was being a good parent and he was all this concern and, he was frightened about the concern of his child, but he puts his child in a car with him driving, not 100% sure about his eyesight or his fitness to drive.
It's incredible.
Just a load of bollocks.
Yeah, listen, I'd like to bring Josh in at this point. Josh, you've been listening to all this, I'm sure, seeing you're nodding your head a fair amount there. What was your take on Mr. Cummings' explanations this afternoon?
Laughable. So going back to what Sam was saying she has no sympathy for Dominic Cummings. To be honest, I do have a little bit of sympathy because it seems like whatever has been going down in 10 Downing Street has been an absolute shambles. They've been running around with headless. But where I don't have sympathy is the fact that they've known about this virus for a long, long time. And the government's been totally unprepared to handle it. I mean, Dominic Cummings has been the person to help set the rules and guidance dealing with COVID-19 to begin with, and now he's the one flouting the rules. Going back to what you were saying when he was test driving with to test his eyesight. I mean, going by that logic, we're going to start testing people's driving to see if they're under the influence of alcohol or not.
Yeah, I know that. As a parent myself, the last thing I would do is get in the car with my child in the back if I couldn't see properly. I mean, that just beggars belief, surely.
But definitely what we've seen here is millionaire privilege, I think, where it's been one rule for us regular people, and it's been another rule for the people at the top. I know it actually reminds me of a book I studied as a child called Animal Farm, where everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others. The rules apply to us, but not to them. And, the total dishonesty we've seen coming from 10 Downing Street, amid when this story broke was incredible, Whereas in comparison, when we go back to when we've seen Dr. Catherine, who's the head of the affairs in Scotland, when she'd made a mistake, Nicola Sturgeon came out and
of course that was Catherine Calderwood.
Accepted her resignation straight away. Boris Johnson's basically doubled down on Dominic Cummings. I'm just curious as to why.
He can't seem to keep his own team in line. One of the things, Josh, that struck me about this is that, according to Mr. Cummings' explanation of this, he himself doesn't even seem to understand the rules which the Conservative government has put out for people to live by, because he obviously thinks that they don't apply to him, and if they do, you can twist them to mean virtually anything you like.
Yeah, I think what's happened is Dominic Cummings' actions has actually totally undermined public faith in the UK government, whatever public faith they had left. In my eyes, they've lost all credibility, particularly because Boris Johnson's now stood to... Well, you seen yesterday when Boris Johnson made a speech, he appeared out of nowhere after being missing for a long, long time.
Yeah.
To do nothing other than defend Dominic Cummings, not to address the nation, where we've seen the Scottish government doing really informative sessions addressing the people of Scotland and giving information. Boris Johnson came on to defend his pal on national television, and we've actually now started to, or what I think is what we're seeing now as well, is that Dominic Cummings is a special advisor to the government, but he's been treated like an elected politician and given this platform to try and make people feel sorry for him, give this sad story. You know, he broke the rules, he really effed up. It's not acceptable. He has to go and he has to resign.
Yeah. Sam, if I could return to you for a moment. Another issue which I think was worth looking at was why Mr. Cummings didn't think to phone his own, I think it was his niece, who he was going to get to do the babysitting up in Durham. If he was that ill, why not phone his niece to come down to London? Would have surely have made a lot more sense than both of them with COVID-19 driving all the way up there and potentially spreading the disease to his elderly parents.
Maybe, how can I put this, Gordon, that people in such privilege don't have such common sense is maybe the best way to put it. You know, the rest of us...
I think you're being very charitable there.
Yeah, the rest of us generally, that's the kind of majority of people, most parents out there would kind of make that decision and make that choice, but to drive 260 miles and claim they didn't do a pit stop on the way up.
With a wee boy of 4.
With a wee boy of 4.
Yeah.
I know that's impossible. 4 years old,
well,
that's, I know that's impossible to do that.
Well, of course, a half-hour trip as well, Sam. It took a half-hour trip and the wee boy had to have a tinkle in the middle of that.
Exactly.
So how did they manage 260 miles without stopping?
Yeah, because I know with my wee ones, when mines have been younger at that age group, you'll probably know this, every parent knows this one, sometimes they just like to stop and have a wee tinkle just because it's the adventure, it's the, let's
breaks the journey
toilet
up
outside, are we allowed to do it against a tree, and, and it's that, this is good, but I don't really want it, but... Yeah, it doesn't matter if mum or dad needs to get somewhere, but we want to stop and we want to, they have a fascination with toilets and things like that, Every shop you go into, everywhere you go, I need the toilet, you take them and you go through the motions. And us parents have been there, we've done it, those kids, watch the kids, know that. So I don't believe, but yeah, it's just common sense. It's just another excuse. It's basically, listening to him there, it was very much, it was listening to someone saying, yes, I helped to write the rules, yes, I know the rules, blah, blah, blah. But I never done anything wrong, even though, I don't accept that I broke the rules, even though, I have broke the rules. And it's just sheer arrogance of the fact that, he thinks he's done nothing wrong. But what I would like to know is, there's people out there who have been fined and who have been spoken to by the police for travelling somewhere because they've been concerned about family members or their children. What happens with these people now?
Well, of course, people have been turned back on motorways for going on long journeys by the police and told just to go straight back home. So, Mr. Cummings obviously managed to evade the police wherever he happened to have been driving. I believe it was probably the A1 he was driving up. But the other interesting thing, I think, if going back into the story, I actually read a little bit of Mr. Cummings' wife's post. I think she wrote an article about the effect of the disease on both of them, and it did sound as if both of them had a very severe reaction to the disease, and I frankly was astonished when they said they drove 30 miles in that kind of condition. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I came down with COVID symptoms a week before lockdown. Yeah. And I was literally floored. I was floored. And very much even, for a couple of weeks after that, I was floored still. It took me a while. It took me a good 3-4 weeks before, I could start cycling and start getting out and about again and things, because there was no way I could drive. my car was in a garage anyway, but there was no way even to contemplate. I mean, it was 3 to 4 weeks before I even got on my, me and the wee fella went out cycling, because I was absolutely floored, because it drains a lot out of you, and you sleep a lot. You do sleep a lot. So if he had COVID symptoms and he was really that ill and as bad as what he said, he would have been exhausted. He would have his concentration wouldn't have been the same. He wouldn't have been able, all the things that you need for when you're driving.
You might be taking medication as well, Sam, and that would obviously affect his ability to drive. Josh, I'm about to go to our next part of the story, which I'd hopefully, but I'm going to bring you in on this in a moment. But on the back of Mr. Cummings' broadcast today, it's been said now that Dominic Cummings, after his press conference, the SNP Westminster leader, Mr. Blackford, has said that what should have been a resignation statement has turned out to be a botched PR exercise that changes nothing. And it's now beyond doubt that Dominic Cummings broke multiple lockdown rules. There was no apology and no contrition from Mr. Cummings for his behaviour. And now, following his unrepentant press conference, there is no excuse left for him either. He has done nothing but double down the double standards that he's displayed, in which millions of people across the UK are furious about. And let's be clear, there is nothing about Mr. Cummings that is exceptional, except his complete inability to realise that he broke the rules. The Prime Minister has no option but to sack Mr. Cummings. His failure to do so far, is a gross failure of leadership. Boris Johnson has apparently known about this for weeks and has failed to offer any answers himself, and now has no option but to sack Dominic Cummings and answer questions about his own role in the Downing Street cover-up. Boris Johnson's failure to show leadership is damaging the public health message and putting lives at risk, as leading health experts have warned. The longer the Prime Minister allows this farce to continue, the more the Tory government will lose credibility and respect. He must sack Mr. Cummings without further delay. Now, Josh, I wanted to bring you in here at this point. So far, the Prime Minister has said that he fully supports his advisor. What do you think it will take for Boris Johnson to sack this man? Is he so important to the British government that he can't be sacked?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, one of the things that hasn't been pointed out enough, and something I've been rattling on about, shouting from the rooftops, is the fact Dominic Cummings made this round trip with COVID symptoms. Wasn't the fact that the reason the stay-at-home message was put in place in the first place was because if you have COVID symptoms and leave your home, you are then endangering the lives of other people who are much more vulnerable to you, and then the people you're exposing to are then exposing the people they're going home to, and so on and so on. So if Dominic Cummings, say, had been stopped by the police on his way up during this 260-mile journey, he would then be exposing vital frontline workers. Say he had a car crash because his eyesight wasn't particularly very well, or because he was feeling absolutely floored with the symptoms, then the first responders and the ambulance team that responded to him would then be exposed to the COVID virus even further as well. And then their families and the people they work with, it's absolutely ludicrous in my eyes. And I'm sure no one can disagree that Dominic Cummings hasn't been sacked on the basis of this alone. He helped make this message at the stay at home, and I don't know. What will
there's a bit of a mix-up as well between which rules he broke, because at the time when he broke the rules, we were in lockdown, as far as I remember. But he had started, or his wife had started to show symptoms. Now, in that situation, the advice was very clear that anyone in the household with that person who's showing symptoms should self-isolate straight away. And not get in a car with the entire household and head 260 miles. But the entire household should have been isolated in London, surely.
So I think that the guidance was, if you have symptoms, you self-isolate for 7 days. If someone in your household has symptoms, they self-isolate and don't leave the house for 14 days. And his first instinct was to say, oh, actually, I have a child. Well, you know what? Every parent in the world has a child, and they don't go flouting the rules. This is a global pandemic. These rules are put in place for a reason. But he thinks he's exceptional. He thought his circumstances were exceptional. well, Dominic Cummings, they weren't exceptional. Every other parent in this country who have children living with them at home has gone through the exact same circumstances or similar circumstances, and they've had to deal with it. No, not many people have the privilege of visiting a second home or visiting a house on their parents' estate, because they want a relative to look after their children just in case. There's a million and one just in cases across the country that all of us are facing. There's so many risks involved. People are losing their jobs because they can't commute or whatever because of the stay-at-home message. And to me, it's beyond belief. What will it take for him to get sacked? I don't know.
Josh, can I ask it? What's your opinion of the response so far of the Labour leader? Keir Starmer came out, I believe, and said that he thought there should be an inquiry, and other MPs, Labour MPs, rather than calling for him to resign, have actually demanded an apology. Do you think the Labour leadership and the Labour Party, parliamentary party in general, has a strong enough line on this? Do you think they really are going to have a go at Mr Johnson and Mr Cummings, or are they seem to be playing a game with this, that they don't want to criticise too much for some reason?
Yeah, so I did a bit of digging. Every other political party are asking for Dominic Cummings to resign, and I believe rightly so. I looked at why Labour were calling for this different course of action, and the reasoning behind it was because they believe if there is an inquiry, it'll keep media focus on the situation. But what we've seen from Labour in the past few years, and I was hopeful when Jeremy Corbyn came into power, and then nothing much happened with Jeremy Corbyn, and then I was hopeful when Keir Starmer came into power that England would have a strong opposition again, and this.
But he hasn't.
The response has been quite worrying, I think, because it has been a totally weak line from Labour, and I kind of understand their reasoning behind it. I don't agree with it, though. It's weak. At the height of a global pandemic, they're asking for an apology and for an inquiry. How about with sack Cummings and then get an inquiry? Yeah.
Okay, Sam, what I was going to say, Sam, here in the back of what Josh has just been saying is that Keir Starmer is no longer just Mr. Keir Starmer. He's now Sir Keir Starmer. Do you think that he's maybe getting a bit worried that he's been aiming for a peerage all this time? He doesn't want to rock the boat too much.
I mean, the thing is with Starmer, I just think he's been very, very weak at the moment. I agree with Josh with this. He's been very weak. I expected something a bit more stronger words and things like that. Yeah. Why he's doing it, I don't know. I wish I had my crystal ball with me, Gordon, but I don't. It would be great, but no, I don't know. I honestly couldn't answer that one, Gordon. But no, I would have expected a bit more, something a bit more stronger wording. Looking. Yeah. Boris Johnson really needs to be sacking Cummings. End of. There's. We lost our Catherine Calderwood. And she wasn't even displaying COVID symptoms. If anybody is and I don't mean this to sound kind of.
She was perfectly healthy, wasn't she?
But I don't mean to sound flippant or anything. But I'm more likely to trust a doctor. Yeah. Flouting rules than I am. Somebody who's a political advisor. That does not excuse anyone from flouting the rules, because at the end of the day, the rules are there for a reason. But if I was going to pick out the two who I would trust more, it would be, a doctor. I just think it just goes to show you how unbalanced everything is. And Johnston is basically there, to stick by his best bud and whatever. The question we should all be asking is, can he actually sack him, or is it the other way around? Who actually, is it just maybe the fact that Cummings is the one that actually runs the country?
Okay, thanks for that, Sam. Now, the UK government has been challenged to repair to repair the public health damage. The SNP has challenged the UK government over how it will repair the damage to public health advice done by the Prime Minister's defence of Dominic Cummings. The call comes after public health experts warned Mr Cummings' behaviour and the Prime Minister's response has damaged efforts to control the virus. Experts from the Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Behaviours, the SPIB, which feeds analysis and advice to the UK government's emergency panel, SAGE, the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, and is a prime source of government advice, said the Prime Minister's defence undermined public health messages that are vital to tackling coronavirus. Speaking to ITV Good Morning Britain today, Professor Stephen Riker said, if you give the impression there's one rule for them and one rule for us, you fatally undermine the sense of we're all in it together, and you undermine the adherence to the forms of behaviour which got us through this crisis. The real issue here is that because of these actions, because of the undermining of the trust in government, and because of the undermining adherence to the rules that we all need to follow, people are going to die. Now, let's discuss this. Back to you, Sam. First of all, people are going to die because of the actions of Dominic Cummings and the defence of him by the Prime Minister, because people are now thinking, presumably, well, if it's good enough for Dominic Cummings, then it's good enough for me.
Unfortunately, yeah, I agree that's what's going to happen, because basically, you know yourself how people work. You know, if they're seeing somebody who is a very high in the government, you know, an advisor who basically wrote these rules, turning around and saying, oh, well, there's exceptional cases or there's this, people are going to go, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And it is, and already in social media, you can see many doctors, scientists, advisors, all different people on social media saying, please stay at home, please stay at home. And that's been happening over the last couple of days, and very more so in the last couple of days, where they're saying, you know, this is damaging, and as you're seeing more people kind of going back to normal, so to speak. And you're even seeing that here in Scotland as well. I mean, there's been a few times, well, I was out and about today because I had to drop something off for a person, and, you know, and very much today was like a normal Monday. It wasn't as quiet as it
much
normally
busier
is.
today, Sam, I noticed.
You know, so as this, you know, the psychology behind it, people thinking, well, he's done it, but what people don't get is he'd done it in the middle. You know, we were smack bang at I think we were just about to hit the highest peak. So, you know, the infection rate would have been very, very high. We're now, the only reason the infection rate, you know, the transmission infection rate's coming down is because
Sam, I believe
lockdown.
I believe at the same time as Mr Cummings was infected with this illness, Boris Johnson was actually in intensive care or going into intensive care around about the same time.
The virus,
And for some reason, we're only finding out about it now. If I could come to you, Josh, we're looking now at people starting to think, well, this lockdown obviously isn't as great as everybody's saying. Otherwise, why would some of the top officials be able to just drive anywhere they like when they've actually got the disease?
Yeah. So I think what we've seen here is all we need to do is look at the death statistics in the UK. You know, we're one of the highest in the world.
Yeah.
People have been disregarding
only America has beaten us, I think.
Yeah, only the Americans are beating us. And it's this sort of entitled attitude that we as a nation kind of have. You know, the United Kingdom, where we have this attitude where, oh, it's a them, you know, it won't affect me kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, probably reflective in the death toll figures. And, you know, I work in the care sector. I work in the front lines supporting people with learning disabilities and physical disabilities, you know, and these are often people who have got very low immune systems, and it's these exact people who are taking the brunt. It's not the healthy people who think, oh, well, I'm okay, I'll be all right, and pop out and catch the virus and pass it on to someone else because they're displaying very minimal symptoms, you know.
Yeah.
So if I was to unknowingly contract the virus and pass it on to someone that I support, you know,
yeah,
and and it causes their death or the death of a relative or whatever, because it's a chain reaction. You know how the virus contracts from one person to
somebody
the other.
said, you know, if you were to suddenly think, right, I'm fed up, I'm going to go and see my friend across the road for a cup of coffee, and that friend happened to, you know, have been in touch with somebody else who'd been in touch with somebody else who'd had the virus, you would never know that, and you could bring that virus back to your house unwittingly without
And
ever
the thing
knowing
is, you can
who it
wash your
was who
hands as
gave
many
it to you.
times. Like I wash my hands. My hands are dry as anything because I do work in care and I'm constantly washing them. But that's not going to totally eliminate the risk of contracting the virus. It minimizes the chance of contracting the virus. It doesn't eliminate the chance of contracting it and passing it on to another person. So my message to people is, please, 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 it's not just about you. It's about all of us. It's about everyone. It's about the vulnerable people that I work with and I support on a daily basis. You know, it's this genuinely will save lives. And I think how we've seen Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish government, take a different approach to the UK is the wisest thing to do. You know, she's prioritised lives. And of course, the economy is important because people are losing their jobs and being left destitute. I'm one of them. I'm going to lose my job on the 23rd of June because of this, you know. But at the same time, I understand. I have to make the sacrifice in order to save lives. What's more important? A bit of cash in my pocket or the life of another human being? And I know what I value.
Well, we know that trust in the Tory government anyway was pretty fragile before this happened. What do you think the chances are now that Mr. Johnson can ever get back the slim levels of trust that he once had? Is it going to damage his administration badly, this?
Well, to be honest with you, I would have thought the Tories lost trust a long, long time ago. But they keep getting voted in down south for whatever reason, you know, probably because of the weak opposition given by Labour. You know, we've seen it with this Keir Starmer asking for an inquiry into Dominic Cummings, you know, rather than calling for his resignation, which should have been the first thing on his list, and then calling for an inquiry. It's only right there should be an inquiry called anyway.
One thing I've just been asked to make clear to our viewers, the difference between lockdown and self-isolation. Yeah, you're locked down if you don't have the disease, but if you are showing signs of coronavirus, you must self-isolate for at least 7 days and stay at home. And your whole family is also required to self-isolate for 14 days. So it is a very specific set of instructions that were broken, in this case, by Mr. Cummings. Now, one thing, Sam, I wanted to ask you about, and this is perhaps a little bit tangential to the subject slightly. It has been mentioned in the press today the significance of Mr. Cummings holding his press conference in the garden of number 10 Downing Street, which is normally kept for big international summits where the Prime Minister is giving speeches with foreign dignitaries. Is there some significance, do you think, in this? Does Mr. Cummings command so much kudos and respect in the British establishment that they are letting him use the Garden of Number 10 for this purpose?
Well,
or was it just the only place they could do it?
Well, the thing is, could he not have had it in his garden, his own front path? I mean,
well, he's certainly given plenty of interviews on the way to his car. So,
the press have been camped out there, you know. So would he not have been, do it there? It's a bit of a strange one, isn't it, for an advisor to be given that sort of privilege? I guess that's one for, hopefully, if we have an inquiry, we can get an answer to, and Boris Johnson can answer to that one, because it is a bit of a strange one, isn't it?
Well, of course, in normal circumstances, until Mr. Cummings came on the scene, special advisors or SPADs were usually in the background, were never ever heard of, and nobody knew their names. But now we have Dominic Cummings all over the papers for 4 days, and he's now become more important, it seems, than the Prime Minister, his employer. I mean, Josh, do you think that Mr. Johnson, Boris Johnson, is actually too frightened to sack this man?
Well, it's almost become accepted that among the people who are in the know in politics that Dominic Cummings is calling the shots. You know, the fact that he's been given this platform, as I said earlier, and he's been treated like this politician, given this huge amount of credibility. Who was Dominic Cummings? Where did he come from? Because I don't remember voting for him, and no one else did either.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's been given this stage to basically perform and talk about his story and all these sort of things, he broke the rules. He helped make the rules, and he shouldn't.
He really should go, shouldn't he? I mean, if he had any honour at all or any integrity, he would go. But then again, he's not a politician. He's maybe not required to have any integrity or honour at all because he's only a special advisor. Sam, surely this man really just should know when he's not wanted.
Well, if you think on it, Gordon, if you're going to go by even like an employment law and things, if you break certain rules of employment, then you go down.
Gross misconduct, I think, Sam.
Yeah, misconduct or whatever it is.
Reckless endangerment.
He's apologised and he doesn't. No, he's not even apologised. I get that wrong. He's not even apologised. He just believes he did nothing wrong. And yeah, it's very much as Josh said. None of us elected him. Nobody voted for him. His name wasn't on the ballot papers. So, but this man seems to have a certain amount of power. He seems to act like the Prime Minister, so to speak. An unelected politician, and questions need to be asked as to why. And you're right. I mean, with special advisors, normally they're in the background and we don't know who they are. Now and again, we'll get snippets of their names and things like that, but that's about it. But the story is definitely never about the special advisors. But he's basically took over. His story is everywhere. It's all over the UK media at the moment about him breaking the rules.
Okay.
And on many occasions. So it's just, you just think, what's going on? Surely, goodness, if that had been anybody else, they would have been sacked by now, or they would have resigned.
Thank you, Sam. I'm going to move on to our next story now. Rishi Sunak. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has authorised a bailout plan to rescue companies that are seen as strategically important, with the Treasury saying that it may step in to support crucial businesses on a last resort basis after other options have run out. Late last night, the Treasury announced that it would try to save those companies whose failure will disproportionately harm the economy. In exceptional circumstances where a viable company has exhausted all options and its failure would disproportionately harm the economy, we may consider support on a last resort basis, a spokesperson said from the Treasury in an emailed statement. We are putting in place sensible contingency planning, and any such support would be on terms that protect the taxpayer, the statement added. Under the plan, which is named Project Birch, the Chancellor has raised the UK Treasury's capacity to handle bespoke bailouts of viable companies which have exhausted all options, including government loan schemes. The UK government could buy stakes in crucial businesses that are facing acute financial problems. However, the Treasury will not initially look at taking equity stakes in companies that are struggling, with the preferred option of being extensions of loans. Companies from across sectors, including steel, aviation and aerospace, are among those facing acute problems, and the offer of the Treasury will apply across all sectors of the economy. Now, if I could start with you on this one, Josh, this is an economical story, and there have been calls in the past for the British government to buy equity stakes in some firms to prevent them from going under, but this appears to have been a step too far for the Treasury.
Yeah, so we've seen at the very start of this Sir Richard Branson calling on the government to give him billions of pounds to keep his Virgin company afloat, on his behalf. To me, it's pretty crazy that the fact that these massive conglomerate companies and organisations are asking for government bailouts to the tune of billions and billions of pounds, but the low-end workers like myself and the regular person who earn a pittance are expected to somehow.
Yeah. The small businesses seem to be expendable.
Something I've been campaigning on myself recently is the fact that workers who work for local authorities at the moment, whose employment's way to end due to the fact on being things like fixed-term contracts, which is my current circumstance, aren't entitled to any government scheme or furlough or any financial assistance whatsoever.
There are cracks in the plans,
and the government aren't doing anything to support people's financial incomes, even though entire families will be left destitute as a result of this. So my priority would be supporting the income and lives of the population of the country, rather than lining the pockets of companies run by billionaires and millionaires. Where I think there should be they should be fronting the majority of the costs way before the government ever considers bailing out their organisations, because we've seen this when the banks went bust.
Of course, yes.
During the crisis,
You read my mind there, Josh. I was just about to say that as well. Sam, Josh just brought up a very important aspect of this, which is fresh in everybody's memories, about how public money was used to bail out the banks when they themselves caused their own demise. This time, I think we could say that these firms did not cause this problem, but they are all stuck with it. Do you think it's justified for the government to step in this way, or should they go further, do you think?
I agree with Josh completely on this one, that the government should be kind of standing by the public, and rather than standing by the kind of the people, the big corporations and things like that. Because what's the criteria going to be, for the government to step in? What type of business is it going to be? Is it going to be businesses that take a loan of people and have them on minimum wage, working long hours, or is it going to be, businesses that are ethically run? So I would like to know a lot more on what type of criteria it's going to be. And the thing is as well, a lot of these big businesses are possibly, I'm not going to say they all are, but possibly are managed and run by people who have very healthy bank balances, i.e. millionaires and billionaires. So why can they not reinvest into their businesses, to keep them afloat? So it'll be quite interesting to see how this is going to work. But they need to be investing in the general people, the public at the bottom, us normal everyday folk. That's how to keep the economy running. Not, the money. It's us that spend the money, it keeps the economy flowing. If we're not spending money, the economy doesn't float. But whereas if you put the money into big businesses, the money doesn't trickle down. They're going to, they're going to invest it in other things and going to do X, Y, and Z. The money's not going to come down. They're not going to.
No, trickle down economics is never. It's probably the biggest con that there's ever been, trickle-down economics. It just doesn't happen that way, as we all know. Josh, if I could come to you on this subject. Now, when governments start stepping into business, particularly Tory governments, things are really bad, because the Conservative Party traditionally tends to help companies or individuals, perhaps I should say, who have made large donations to the party's coffers, allegedly. So is it going to be, do you think, another one of those
well, isn't it funny
bungs for the boys kind of stories?
Socialism is when it benefits their own pockets and the pockets of their friends. They want to use government funds to invest in private sectors. Isn't the fact that we're in this ultra-capitalist society and moving towards this American sort of Americanized economy, the fact that capitalism's to do with supply and demand. If there isn't the supply, there isn't the demand, whatever. But then the Tories who bash socialism and social values until they want to prop up their pals' businesses or their friends' businesses. Interesting to me, anyway.
Yeah. I don't know how they are going to decide on what was the term they used. The term about viable companies that exhausted all options, but we're talking about where was it? Oh yes, this is the phrase I was looking for. Exceptional circumstances where a viable company has exhausted all options and its failure would disproportionately harm the economy. Now, surely the tens of thousands of people whose jobs have been shed by particularly the airlines have been the first casualties of this, and their effect on the economy is surely pretty large as well. The spending power of the workers themselves, as you mentioned earlier on, Sam, is gone. And that is a disproportionate hit to the economy, I would have thought.
Yeah, I guess how we look at it and how they look at it's two different ways. But no, the thing is viable companies that are, a viable company, if it's viable and it's
Well, I think what they mean is companies,
to get help, and
companies which would normally have been profitable without the coronavirus. I think they're talking about.
Do you know what I mean? You just think, well, if they're viable and what, but hey ho, but no, you're right in terms of the airline industry and things like that. I mean, that all the people, and it's not even just the airline industry, but the tourism industry as a whole, travel agents, the lot. I mean, these people are. There's thousands of people that are out of work at the moment. And it would have made more sense to put money in those people's pockets, because that's how the economy keeps going. Spending power. And if you're not putting money in them pocket, not put the money in the businesses. Do it the other way around. But that's Sam, what keeps the businesses going.
Yeah, Sam, I need to leave it there for the time being. I'm going to move to our next story now, and actually going around the world to Taiwan. Now, Taiwan will provide the people of Hong Kong with necessary assistance, the President Tsai Ing-wen has said, after a resurgence in protests in the Chinese-ruled territory against newly proposed national security legislation from Beijing. Hong Kong police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse thousands of people who rallied on Sunday to protest against Beijing's plan to impose national security laws on the city. Writing on her Facebook page late on Sunday, Tsai said that the proposed legislation was a serious threat to Hong Kong's freedoms and judicial independence. Bullets and repression are not the way to deal with the aspirations of Hong Kong's people for freedom and democracy, she added. The Hong Kong protests have won widespread sympathy in Taiwan, and the support support for the protesters by Tsai and her administration have worsened already poor ties between Taipei and Beijing. Hong Kong officials have said that they support the looming legislation. On Monday, Hong Kong's security chief said that terrorism was growing in the city as government departments rallied behind Beijing's plans to introduce the new national security laws. The decision has continued to invite criticism within Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Bar Association said the legislation by China's National People's Congress would violate the territory's de facto constitution, which explicitly states that Hong Kong enacts its own national security law. The Chinese officials on Monday sought to reassure the public while also threatening to hit back at any possible sanctions from Washington. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Liwan told reporters that Beijing would take countermeasures against any US attempt to harm the country's national security. Officials in Beijing and Hong Kong have bristled at the growing international condemnation of the move to impose national security laws and accused those supporting the protesters of foreign interference. Hong Kong, China has accused supporters of Taiwan independence of colluding with the protesters. Now, this is another story in which the big players, I think, America has obviously been mentioned in this, but here we have Taiwan, a Chinese territory as well, giving support, its tacit support to the people of Hong Kong against what they see as, I guess, laws which are just too much for them to bear. I mean, these are threatening the people of Hong Kong. From your point of view, Josh, how do you read the situation in Hong Kong? It never seems to get better. It now seems to have taken another step to the worse, it seems, with Taiwan wading in as well in support of the Hong Kong people.
Yeah, but we'll have some quite aggressive tactics from China, economically and military and politically, for years and years now. We've we've seen examples of this when China's constructing, islands in the sea to strengthen their claim, to expand their territory, so they can do whatever.
They seem to be feeling quite paranoid as a regime at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not too brushed up on my Chinese politics issues, but I'm quite wary and quite fearful of the sort of political moves China is making on a global stage, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Sam, coming to you, do you have sympathy for the people of Hong Kong and the Taipei people in Taiwan sort of riding to their aid here?
Of course I do. I mean, this was one of the fears with Hong Kong when the territory get handed back to China, that this would eventually happen, and and everything. There was meant to be all these regulations and things written into the constitution so that this wouldn't happen. But I think we all kind of knew eventually it was going to happen, and it's shocking and it's heartbreaking because Hong Kong, they have always been kind of dealt with their own national security laws and things. And with this with China, that's them trying to basically prove that they own Hong Kong, therefore Hong Kong shall do as they're told. Yeah. And and I feel sorry for the Hong Kong people living in Hong Kong and Taiwan. Taiwan's has a kind of, I'm not sure if it's a political or a trade kind of thing going on with
it's a Chinese
China
territory
as well, because with Taiwan, China keeps trying to make out that Taiwan is part of the Chinese territory, and Taiwan says no, we're not, we're independent. So, so there's, so Taiwan has been there and is there with China going through a similar.
Because Taiwan is a Chinese territory, but it has an element of self
independence,
self-determination. It has its own government.
I wasn't quite sure of the kind of proper kind of legal kind of thing there. So I can understand why Taiwan's helping out Hong Kong at the moment. And it's just heartbreaking. It's a shame because the thing is, when you see, the kind of Chinese forces going in, they do go in. They don't hold back any punches. I mean, when you, and you think, my goodness, this is just absolutely appalling. Do you know what I mean? But it's basically about dominance over Hong Kong. That's what it's about.
Trying to control dominions and islands. Well, we're going to move on to our sort of almost final story this evening, and this is about Iceland this time. Iceland is easing its national alert against the coronavirus today, allowing for public gatherings of up to 200 people, and nightclubs and gyms reopen as the country nears complete recovery from the outbreak. The Nordic country, which limited the virus spread through a meticulous test and trace strategy and a full lockdown, has confirmed that 1,804 infections and 10 deaths. But there have been only 5 reported new cases in May, and more than 99% of infected persons have recovered. Iceland's alert level was lowered from emergency phase to alert phase, the second of 3 stages, the government said in a statement on Monday. Gyms can now reopen, although only at half capacity, while bars and restaurants can serve customers until 11 p.m, it said. Public gatherings of up to 200 persons will be allowed, and a 2-metre social distancing rule has become optional, but still recommended by authorities. Iceland started lifting lockdown restrictions in early May, allowing hair salons, museums and schools to reopen, after the country's chief epidemiologist said the outbreak was past its peak. The chief epidemiologist has advised that the first phase of easing restrictions does not seem to have led to a rise in infections, the government statement said. Remaining restrictions are set to be lifted on June the 21st. Coronavirus tests have been performed on 58,844 Icelanders, or more than 16% of its people, a greater proportion than almost any other country, thanks in part to its small population. Only 3 people are known to have been infected with the virus. 7 of the 10 people who died were over 70 years old. The pandemic has hit Iceland's tourism-dependent economy hard and prompted the central bank to cut its main rate twice, and the government to spend around $2 billion US in financial aid to stricken businesses and individuals left jobless. This is an interesting story, I think. Josh, if I can come to you first of all on this. Iceland, a small country, but it seems to be very agile in the way that it deals with virtually any kind of crisis.
Yeah, I similarly think the same thing. Iceland has always seemed to me to be quite a country that takes a pragmatic approach to issues, and they're certainly one to watch, even the way in which, going back to our conversation earlier, how they dealt with the bankers, when the banks failed. And
yeah, I think they jailed their bankers, didn't they?
Yeah, they often go by the research and what works and aren't afraid to go against the grain, the global grain of what the rest of the world's doing.
You don't want to mess with the Icelanders.
Yeah, even their education system, where they've totally revamped it to scrap the old ways of traditional studying and of English or whatever language they're studying, and mathematics or whatever. They're taking an approach where it's about teaching skills and real life skills.
Yeah.
So I think, particularly from a global aspect, I think Scotland will be watching Iceland and how to deal with the crisis, and a lot of other countries will too.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Sam, if I could bring you in on this, what's your reaction to hearing this story from Iceland, that they're lifting the lockdown almost completely now and getting back to normal with some preconditions?
It's amazing. It just goes to show you how test and trace works and a complete lockdown works.
If it's done properly.
Just goes to show you when a government does it properly, it works. And that's them now at the stage of pretty much reopening, and it'll be interesting to watch over the next few weeks. And I really hope that they don't get another wave or anything like that, and it'll be really good to watch. But it just goes to show you how it can be successfully done when it's done properly from the beginning.
Typical of a small independent country, yeah.
Yes,
isn't it just?
that as well. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that little comment leads me rather neatly to our final item of this evening. Earlier this year, Aberdeen Independence Movement launched their website with a section of the site dedicated to blog content. They're actively seeking submissions of original research or educated analysis that promotes discussion and informs people on the positive case for Scottish independence. Now, our guest from IAM, Josh Menny, can tell us a little bit more about it. So, Josh, over to you on the launch of your website.
Yes, so I am one of the founding members of AIM, or AIM, the Aberdeen Independence Movement, and we sort of built this organisation to make it non-party political, and we wanted to take a sort of steady approach to how we take issues, and we wanted to encompass everyone's views. You can be a member of the SNP or the Green Party or the Conservative Party, as long as you believe in Scottish independence in a pragmatic manner. Then we want to hear your views. We want you to share your idea of an independent Scotland, what the things you'd like to see.
Josh, so if somebody wants to contact you with their ideas or their analysis or their views on independence, how can they get in contact with the site?
So you can get in touch with us. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and our website is www.aim.scot, and you can also contact us by email. You can literally forward us your ideas on policy, things you'd like to see in Independent Scotland, a wee blog post, and you can email that to us on aimaberdeen@gmail.com, and we're more than happy to take a look and share your ideas.
Excellent, Josh. Well, listen, thank you for that. Well, we hope that the plug tonight will help your website. There's a little bit. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about how AIM came into being, Josh. You're the spokesman for them this evening. What was the history of AIM? How did it come about?
So there's been quite a few active Yes groups and independence groups throughout Scotland.
Yeah.
And each group takes a different approach. And that's not faulting any other group. Every Yes or pro-independence group has its place in Scotland, and Aberdeen or whatever. Aberdeen Independence Movement was formed because the members or the founding members of this organisation wanted to take a sort of approach to trying try to get on side.
Yeah. Did
People
you feel
who
there was
did
more of
vote
a...
no during the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, because to get independence, we need to convert and convince other people, you know.
Yeah.
And I think these groups that go to rallies and wave flags is fantastic. I do it myself, but
So
it doesn't appeal to all people.
So what...
And I think we need to try and appeal to everyone. So each group has its place, and Aberdeen Independence Movement's there working to convince the people that sort of niche wouldn't necessarily appeal to.
So what kind of information, or what kind of articles, or what kind of blog posts or ideas are you actually looking for from the public?
And literally anything that people think is reasonable, things that you are passionate about or you want to see in an independent Scotland, policy ideas that you might consider to be radical that you'd like to see in Scotland, things like, take Iceland for example, we were just talking about them. You know, I mentioned about the education policy they've adapted. You know, they've totally transformed education in that country, whereas it's not the typical classroom learning. You know, if you were to write something about that and talk about it and how it could be beneficial in a small independent country like Scotland, because what we've found is small independent countries where we share people's ideas are more successful than the larger ones that aren't as localized.
Listen, Josh, thank you very much for giving us that information. We're just coming to the end of the show now. I'd just like to thank Josh Minnie from the Aberdeen Independence Movement. I hope you will get in touch with him on the website that we showed earlier. And also thank Sam Payton from the Save Loch Lomond campaign. Thanks again, Sam. We'll see you again maybe later in the week. Anyway, that's about it from Scotland at 7. Of course, if you want to become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland, you can do so by going to our website, www.broadcastingscotland.scot/register. That's it from Scotland at 7 for this Monday edition. I'll be back again on Thursday. In the meantime, Kenny will take the shows on Tuesday and Wednesday. That's it from this team at Scotland at 7 tonight. I'll see you again on Thursday. Very good night to you. Hooray.